What's up, gamers? I hope you guys are all having a great day today, full of so much positivity and happiness, because if you clicked on this video, you're probably not going to find much of that, because today we're going to be talking about none other than Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now, I'm not typically one for video game reviews, so don't really consider this a formal review, but this is coming from someone who has 100% of this game. I have literally done every single miserably boring task that can be found in this game. I've gotten every single achievement, and it took me about 24 hours total. And overall, man, I wish I really was able to say that I enjoyed the time I spent with this game, because what once was one of my favorite video game franchises in this entire industry is just a hollow husk of its former self. And Assassin's Creed Mirage, I think, is probably the most appropriately named game in the Assassin's Creed franchise, because what's presented to you as a quote-unquote return to form by Ubisoft for the Assassin's Creed franchise is exactly what the name suggests, a mirage, because upon further inspection behind the blatant nostalgia baiting, there is literally nothing here but the same generic modern Assassin's Creed experience that you've grown accustomed to ever since Assassin's Creed Origin came out. Just a little bit scaled back and a little less bloaty on the unnecessary content. But make no mistake, this is not the quote-unquote return to form that Ubisoft was promising. So let's go ahead and kick things off with getting the obvious out of the way here, and that's the fact that this game was clearly supposed to be a DLC for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I mean, this is literally a direct prequel to that game, and the story is going to make absolutely no sense to you if you haven't played Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So calling this a standalone experience, I think, is pretty fucking disingenuous, and it really does explain a lot, considering that Assassin's Creed Valhalla got that absolutely horrible Norse mythology DLC for its final DLC, because probably what happened is they were developing this game to be the final DLC after the Siege of Paris, and then realized, hey, we can spin this off into its own standalone experience, charge full price for it, and use it to nostalgia bait the shit out of the Assassin's Creed fanbase and make even more money. But just playing this game, especially in open combat, you'll feel right at home if you played Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Just a lot of the combat features were removed. It still has that really light and weightless feeling combat where you're just wailing on an enemy 5 to 6 times trying to kill them. It just feels really bad, especially compared to the old Assassin's Creeds. But let's go ahead and pivot and talk about the gameplay. Now, this is going to be one of the few areas that I would say is mixed for me, because there's things I liked about this game, combat and gameplay-wise, versus the more recent entries in the Assassin's Creed franchise. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I genuinely still don't like. But let's go ahead and kick this off with the positive. So the one, I guess, area you could say is a return to form, even just a little bit, for this game is the fact that the stealth is actually emphasized for the first time in a long time. You can assassinate every single enemy in the game with a single button press from start to end. There's no more level-based combat. You actually play as an assassin again, so I will give Ubisoft credit for that. The focus on stealth in this game is definitely way better than any of the recent Assassin's Creed games, probably from Unity forward. So to their credit, it's definitely a massive step in the right direction in that aspect, in returning to the original form of the Assassin's Creed franchise, and I genuinely did enjoy playing this game. In stealth, it's just once you break out of stealth is where the problems arise, and the combat system in this game is absolutely miserable, dude. Like I mentioned previously, if you played Valhalla, you know exactly what to expect with the melee combat. It just feels really light and just overall weak. You're just wailing on enemies over and over again. You know, unlike the previous entries in the series, like Assassin's Creed 2 through Black Flag, where you had the counter-based combat system where you could chain together a bunch of kills and basically one-hit every single enemy in the game and just take out 10 dudes with a single combo. You just feel really weak and underpowered in this game, which I don't like. You're supposed to be an assassin, which is like the pinnacle of a killing machine in this like franchise, and the previous games, like from Assassin's Creed 1 until Black Flag, did a really good job of just making you feel like an absolute walking badass. And I feel like something has really been lost ever since Unity, where they've made the focus like this RPG Souls-light combat where you're dodge rolling and parrying and you're just repeatedly hitting the same enemy over and over again. Like, that has never felt good in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and if this was a true return to form, they should have done more to bring back that classic combat system, which I think would have been a huge improvement over what we actually got. But it kind of goes back to the point that this was an Assassin's Creed Valhalla expansion, because this literally plays just like Valhalla, just dramatically scaled back. Like, you don't have the special abilities anymore. You can actually counter and kill most enemies. However, there's no chaining of countering like in the older Assassin's Creed games, but you still have the aspect of like an undodgeable big red attack that you have to dodge roll away from, which is really irritating too, because there's a fucking stamina meter in this game, because every game has to be fucking Dark Souls like, and it's really obnoxious if you're in a large group of enemies, because if you dodge more than like 3 times, which a lot of times you're going to be doing to get away from large crowds of enemies, because even if you're good at countering, you're going to just get wailed on. So if you're dodging more than 3 or 4 times, which if you're in a large group of people trying to get away and they're all spamming the unblockable attack one after another, you're going to run out of stamina very quickly, and there's going to be a lot of times in combat where you're swinging your sword and nothing happens because this stupid stamina meter is out, and you don't really even notice that you're out of stamina until it's too late, because it's like so small and tucked away in the left bottom corner, so it's not even prominently displayed during combat. So there's a lot of moments of just frustration where you're trying to take out a big group of enemies, you're pressing a button and literally nothing happens. There's no on-screen prompt to indicate that you're out of stamina or anything like that. So a lot of times you just get frustrated in combat because you're not watching this arbitrary stamina meter, or because you dared to dodge more than 4 times in 10 seconds. So that aspect of combat and that irritation that the modern Assassin's Creed games have is definitely still alive and well. So if you're hoping that this was a true return to form for the franchise based on Assassin's Creed 1 through Black Flag, you will be gravely disappointed, unfortunately. But I would say overall this is a step in the right direction from Valhalla, but overall I don't think it was a big enough step. The removal of level-based combat was definitely a big plus in my mind, but overall it just wasn't enough to make this actually a worthwhile experience in terms of gameplay, aside from the stealth, which again I do want to focus on and say is actually a really redeeming aspect of this game. And if you enjoy playing Assassin's Creed games in stealth, you'll probably have a pretty good time with this game, because everything feels very well catered and designed around the stealth gameplay experience, but there are a lot of times where you are going to have to break it, and that's where I think the combat in this game really falls apart, and that's why I'm kind of mixed on this category overall. Another thing I do want to touch on is the assassin's tools in this game, which are absolutely broken. The first one you're going to get is the throwing knife, which absolutely is just the best piece of equipment throughout the game. You're going to be using it all the time. It's really fun and satisfying to use. Make sure to upgrade your skills to be able to pick up the ones that you throw, because for whatever reason from the beginning of this game, when you throw a throwing knife, you're not actually able to walk over to the body that you threw it into and pick it back up, because, you know, everything has to be an RPG these days, so you have to unlock it on your skill tree before you can actually do it. But the throwing knife was really fun. The other standout piece of equipment for me was the smoke bombs, which are plain broken in combat encounters. You can literally upgrade your smoke bombs to not only last for like 10 seconds at a time, but you can also make it that they heal you at the same time, and on top of that, anyone that is hit by the smoke bomb literally forgets that you exist. I'm not even kidding. And when you throw down the smoke bomb in open combat, all of a sudden you're able to assassinate every single person caught up in it, even though they're actively engaged in combat with you. So it's absolutely broken. It is by far the most abusable piece of equipment, but at the same time I think it's a lot of fun and gives a nice power fantasy feeling if that's what you're looking for. And just kind of circling back to, like I mentioned, skill trees in this game, unfortunately that's an aspect that they decided to keep. You know, long gone are the days of just playing the game and naturally unlocking new abilities and tools and everything like that. Nope, everything is based on a fucking skill tree in this game, actually 3 skill trees, and it just feels really unnecessary, because by the time you actually unlock unlock all the skill points in the game, there's nothing left to do in the game. So it literally creates this false sense of progression. You're working towards filling out these skill trees when in reality, it's literally the very last thing you're going to be able to do in this game. I had exhausted all the side activities, the main storyline, and all the fucking Ubisoft chore simulation that I could find in the game in order to get enough skill points to level up my skill trees fully. And by the time I did that, there was literally no reason for me to keep playing. So it's like, oh great, I became this really powerful assassin to literally be able to do nothing moving forward. So I hate that aspect of modern Assassin's Creed games. I like the way that you progressed in the previous games where you just became a generally more powerful badass throughout the game and you were actually given time to enjoy, you know, the fruits of your labor, so to say. And I just feel like this sense of like progression that they're going for with the skill trees is a complete miss and really does nothing but just adds unnecessary padding to the Ubisoft collectathon gameplay loop that is definitely toned down compared to the more recent Assassin's Creeds, but is definitely still present. One quick thing I do want to add as well before we pivot to the side content itself, I do want to say the traversal I did like. It's no longer the climb on any surface style that's been present in the past 3 Assassin's Creed games. It feels a lot more deliberate, but it's still the hold A and press forward on the joystick to auto climb system, which, you know, I know a lot of people like. I personally like the feel of a much more deliberate parkour system, but overall it's definitely an improvement over the previous entries because when you're climbing a surface, it actually feels more deliberate, and you do kind of in some cases, not frequently, have to go out of your way to find the next spot that you need to grab onto in order to keep climbing up a tower or whatever it is you're trying to scale. At least it's no longer a fucking Spider-Man simulator, but let's go ahead and talk about the side content in this game. Now, this is definitely an area of negativity for me because there is not a singular side activity in this game that is even remotely memorable. It's the same generic Ubisoft collectathon AI-generated side quest activities that you're used to by now if you've played any recent entries in this franchise, and unfortunately, progression is directly tied to your side activity completion if you're someone that wants to unlock all the tools and skills in this game. So buckle in, boys. If you're somebody that wants to experience everything that Assassin's Creed Mirage has to offer, you're gonna have to sit through about 10 hours worth of just painfully boring side activities and Ubisoft collectathon activities as well. So overall, I would say this is definitely an area of weakness in this game. The Tales of Baghdad, which are supposed to be kind of like the special side quest in this game, literally last for like 1 to 2 minutes each, are super forgettable, and overall just feel like a complete waste of your time. And then you'll also pick up contracts from the Assassin's Bureau, which is a really boring AI-generated quest design that feels very similar to a mission structure you would find in a game like Skyrim. You're either assassinating someone, picking someone up and carrying them out of a base, or picking up a random object out of a guarded area. There's bonus rewards for not breaking stealth or not being detected or not killing anyone, but very rarely do they actually incentivize you to do any of that because you get maybe like 60 extra shekels, and literally money in this game is completely fucking worthless and one of the most easy commodities to come across. In fact, the only commodity that you're going to have trouble finding is something called components, which literally is the roadblock for you being able to upgrade your equipment, which the only way to consistently get components is to grind these annoying AI-generated side activities that you'd probably rather put an ice pick through your temple than complete over and over again. But if you're someone like me who wanted to go for the full Assassin's Creed experience and 100% this game, you are going to spend several hours grinding these miserably generic assassin missions over and over again, as well as partaking in the typical Ubisoft collectathon activities as well. But overall, I would definitely say the side activities are a very weak aspect of this game, and if you could, I would recommend completely skipping over them entirely because none of them are actually worth your time. Go ahead and talk about the setting of this game, and this is going to be fun because this is one of the key areas that Ubisoft use to nostalgia bait everyone into buying this game, because it's a return to the Middle East, dude. It's like Assassin's Creed 1. It makes me think of playing as Altair, but it's nothing like Assassin's Creed 1 because somehow 300 years before the events of Assassin's Creed 1, we're supposed to believe that not only is the Middle East a much more open and accepting place, but also it's a place full of equality. I just find this very funny because we're supposed to believe that 100 years into the spread of Islam throughout the Middle Eastern region, we're supposed to believe that during the 800s, somehow the Middle East was more open, equal, and accepting than it is even by today's standards. I don't know, man. To me, it's just always funny when you see these developers talk about creating a faithful recreation of whatever time period it is they're trying to put in the video game, and Ubisoft is definitely guilty of doing that. And when you look at medieval Iraq and judge it by today's standards, this game is more progressive than actual parts of that country today. Like, I'm supposed to believe that somehow 1200 years ago, an Islamic country during the peak years of the spread of Islam was more open and accepting of women than it is today. Like, that just literally takes beyond the typical suspension of belief, which I know Assassin's Creed is nothing if not historically inaccurate, but come on, bro. Like, at least the previous games felt somewhat faithful. Like, Assassin's Creed 1, I would say, was pretty faithful to the Middle Eastern setting, and a lot of people will be like, well, they just use generic character models because of technical constraints. Are you telling me that walking around in Assassin's Creed Mirage, the character models aren't generic? I don't know, dude. It's like, it's pretty obvious what they're going for. Ubisoft is a sinking ship. They're on their way to bankruptcy, so I guess they're waiting for Daddy BlackRock to bail them out. So they're desperate to get their ESG score up. So they're going to make the Middle East during medieval times look like an open, accepting, and equal place for all races and genders and religious beliefs, which, again, is completely comical. I understand you already have to suspend a little bit of belief to play an Assassin's Creed game, which I don't really have a problem doing. I just thought it was funny in this particular instance, especially considering the world events that are going on right now. And don't you worry, we'll talk about the amount of boss babes in this game as well too, and female scholars. But overall, I felt the setting of Baghdad was fine. It felt a little bit generic at times. The city literally feels like it was generated by AI, in all honesty, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Ubisoft is doing for most of their games at this point, because there's not really any memorable portion of the map, in all honesty. I guess you could say like the central green dome location is kind of cool, but you really can't do anything there. It's not really a focal point of the game until the very end. In fact, you're literally discouraged from even going near it until later in the game, based off of a map designation that you need to be a master assassin in order to approach it. But I don't know, there was nothing really too memorable about the setting. It just felt like a generic Middle Eastern AI generated setting with, you know, the scale turned up to max, as Ubisoft typically does. They over exaggerate the scale and scope of the cities they create in these games, which probably makes them a lot more interesting to explore, to their credit. But I didn't really feel like the setting of Baghdad really mattered too much. This game could have literally been set anywhere, because the actual setting of the game has very little importance on the overarching story, which I think was a big weak point of this game itself. Which that brings us to the story, and I don't really care. This section's gonna have spoilers because I don't like talking about a story if I can't talk about the story, and I highly doubt anyone who's playing this game is playing it for the story. Like, if you're playing an Assassin's Creed game for the story in modern day, I don't really know what the fuck to tell you. That ship has sailed with Black Flag, and ever since then, the story of Assassin's Creed has been an absolute fucking joke. So if you don't want to listen to spoilers, I'll put a timestamp in the description so you can go ahead and skip to the next part of this video. But spoiler alert, the story is absolute dog shit, and potentially the worst Assassin's Creed story I think I've ever played. So the game starts out with you playing as Basim, who's essentially just a broke boy on the street that steals money from people. His family or village, whatever, I didn't really pay too much attention, got killed by the cult, which the cult in the new Assassin's Creed game is the equivalent of the Templars, but, you know, considering that the Templars didn't exist at this point, they call them the cult, and it's super generic. The cult doesn't actually do anything. They don't really have any end goal, and from game to game, it's literally just an excuse to kill a bunch of random NPCs. Like, essentially, they don't fucking matter. They have very little importance to the overarching plot, but in the case of Assassin's Creed Mirage, they are the only plot. Essentially, this game boils down to you repeatedly finding these various cult members through collecting one or two clues, doing boring missions in order to uncover their identity until you inevitably kill them. That is essentially the entire gameplay loop of this game, and in typical Assassin's Creed modern day fashion, this process is extremely tedious and the cult members really are not memorable whatsoever. Long gone are the days of the cult or Templar members actually being important to the story and having real ambitions or goals or things that drive them. Instead, they're just a collection of random NPCs that are the big bad guys of the game, and they're bad for the sake of being bad, which, considering the fact that you're literally someone that kills hundreds if not thousands of innocent guards who just showed up to work that day, are you really that much better than they are? And the assassins or hidden ones in this game really just are unlikable as well too. There's just no good side characters in this game, and the main character you play as, Basim, is incredibly bland and has the typical fucking Marvel movie writing that you expect in modern year video games. I mean, the writing in this game is so bad that you literally have Basim complaining that someone is torturing someone when his entire role throughout the game is to kill hundreds if not thousands of people simply for showing up to work, man. Again, this game tries to draw like all these morality lines and everything, and it completely falls apart when you consider the fact that you're literally a fucking assassin, dude. Like, are you really the one to play moral arbiter on people for, you know, torturing someone for information? Like, it's comical at best, and the characters and writing in this game are a complete joke. Now, what's interesting in particular about the cult in this game is a very large number of these cult members, who are supposed to be some of the most influential and powerful members of Baghdad society, happen to be women, including women scholars, because nothing screams medieval Middle Eastern like a female scholar, man. And it's really funny too, because the head of the cult is also a woman, which, you know, it's Ubisoft, it's what you've come to expect. They need that ESG score to try and save their dying company, but I don't know, man. I'm not gonna go as far as to say it ruins the entire game. The game itself isn't good, whether the characters are female or not. I don't really think that's the most important aspect, so don't get it twisted, but it just is funny, and it just is another thing in the list that you can point to and laugh at.
The Khalifa encourages all who can to instruct their children in proper religious.
And on top of that, guess who the head of the assassins is? I guess they're not technically the head, but guess who your master is in this game? It's a 60-year-old chain-smoking grandma that sounds like the woman in the commercial who tells you to be careful when you're taking a shower to make sure water doesn't spray down the hole in your throat.
My memories are buried next to him. I refuse to let his death hunt me, the way his breath hunted me when he was alive. I won't let the past define me. This is why I now consider myself the daughter of no one.
I'm Mary, and I used to be a smoker. I want to give you some tips about getting ready in the morning.
But going back to the plot, Basim is brought in by the assassins and chain-smoking grandma and is taught the ways of the blade, essentially, and he goes on his quest to hunt down the cult members. And right as you're about to kill the main cult member, the story takes a fantastical turn and you find out that you're related to the original humans of the Assassin's Creed series, and there's a secret site hidden under the Assassin's headquarters that'll allow you to get into one of those ancient ancient structures that we've seen in so many other Assassin's Creed games. And right before you're about to go off with her, you know, chain-smoking grandma comes in and kills her and warns you, you better not go investigate. So what do? You go and investigate. And when you get there, you fight against chain-smoking grandma who tries to kill you, but when you defeat her, she doesn't actually die. You don't kill her. Instead, she throws her blade on the ground and walks off in a fit of rage. So you go inside of the cave and Basim starts having essentially Vietnam flashbacks, and you come to find out that he's actually been imprisoned in this room for however many years, and essentially his childhood friend Nihal, who's this girl you talk to throughout the game and do like missions with here and there, is actually a figment of his imagination. He's actually been a chronic schizophrenic this entire time and has been having insane delusions about this girl actually existing, when in reality she's the spirit of Loki. So apparently Loki is a woman in this game who is like the split alter ego of Basim, and then Loki reinfects Basim's body, basically taking it over, and it cuts to this scene of Basim walking out of the cave, warning everyone that he's coming for him and he's gonna hunt down anyone who's ever stood against him. And the eagle that you've been using throughout the game flies towards you, and instead of landing on your arm in traditional Assassin's Creed fashion, it scratches him on the face, symbolizing that he's no longer the man he once was. I mean, the fact this game literally tries to pull a Fight Club at the very end with little to no indication throughout that's the direction it's going in is just comical at best. I think this is easily the weakest Assassin's Creed story I've ever played, and it really shows that this game was an expansion because there's no actual underlying plot. There's no end goal that the cult is working towards. They just exist and they're evil because the game says so. And literally the task of hunting them down over and over again becomes repetitive and meticulous at best, and overall is one of the most unrewarding payoffs I think I've ever seen in a video game. And the fact that it's literally a direct prequel to Valhalla again backs up the fact this was meant to be DLC. It is not a true standalone experience, because if you didn't play Valhalla, this story would make absolutely no sense whatsoever to you. So the story, in my opinion, is a complete fucking wash. But real quick, I do have one more part of this game I want to talk about, and that of course is the graphics and the performance. When I played this game, I would get insanely bad frame rates. I was playing on the Xbox Series X version of the game. I've learned my lesson, and I do not play Ubisoft PC ports because typically they're absolutely horrific, but the Xbox port is just as bad in this case because I was having insane frame drops all the time playing this game. I had awful screen tearing, which both of those were issues I had in the Xbox version of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, again backing up that idea that this is essentially the same game because I'm having the exact same visual and performance issues as I had with that game 3 years later. But aside from that, I will say the graphics were pretty nice. I thought the color palette of the game looked pretty good. I mean, Ubisoft and graphics has never been an issue. I think their games overall look pretty good. The facial animations could definitely use some work, but I'm not really somebody who cares about that uncanny valley look. I don't need my NPCs in a video game to literally look like real people. Like, I'm not trying to fill some void in my life by playing a video game, so that's fine. I don't really care that much, but I just wanted to touch on that because I was very disappointed with how poorly this game ran. I think I have a few clips that I recorded that I'll try to insert here so you get an idea of what I'm talking about, but overall, man, I would say that was a huge disappointment. Is just how bad this game ran at times. It was borderline unplayable at times. Like, I was getting like 5 frames per second, it felt like, and essentially if you're going from 60 to 5 frames per second, it is pretty much a game-breaking issue, so I thought I would bring it up. Alright, well, this video is already entirely too long, so let me go ahead and wrap this up. Should you play Assassin's Creed Mirage? I mean, if you really want to, I'm not going to say you shouldn't, but I wouldn't pay full price for this game. I would say this is like a $10 to $20 experience at best. You could always sign up for that Ubisoft subscription for like a month, play through it, and cancel it. I mean, that's another option at your disposal, but I would say overall that this game literally feels like it was generated by AI, which you could probably say for a lot of Ubisoft games at this point. There's just nothing memorable about it. The story is bland. They try to do this stupid fucking plot twist at the very end of it with little to no indication of it actually being a thing until the very end of the game. On top of that, there's nothing really great about any of the characters. They're all pretty bland, and the ones that do have an ounce of personality are acting like they're in a Marvel movie. The setting of Baghdad had zero to no importance on the actual story itself. Like in traditional Assassin's Creed games, the setting of the game had some overarching importance to the overall storyline. Like Assassin's Creed 1 had the Crusades, Assassin's Creed 2 was the Renaissance and the rise of the Borgia family, Brotherhood was Cesare Borgia's conquest of the Romagna, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was the age of pirates, Unity, the French Revolution, Syndicate, the Industrial Revolution. Like there was a bunch of overarching plot points that would place some significance into the story based on the setting, and Baghdad in this case has none of that. The setting could have literally been anywhere for this game, and it wouldn't have dramatically impacted the story whatsoever. It just felt like a fucking throwaway setting that they're using for blatant nostalgia baiting. Nothing about this game feels deliberate. It feels like a DLC that was stretched out unnecessarily into being a standalone game. This probably could have been a 5 to 10 hour experience, and it probably would have been for the best. I hate the fact that they still have these RPG mechanics, though I do think it's a step in the right direction for them to refocus on stealth and get rid of level-based combat, hopefully once and for all. But I would say if you're hoping that this was going to be the true return to form for the Assassin's Creed franchise, I wouldn't get your hopes up, because this game is nothing like that, and I think if you go in expecting that, you're going to be extremely disappointed. If I had to give this like a number rating out of 10, I'd give this shit a 5, man. I think the game is okay for what it is. It's just there's nothing special about it, and your time and money is probably spent better pretty much anywhere else, especially in 2023 when we've gotten so many great games released this year, with many more as well releasing in the next coming weeks. So Assassin's Creed Mirage was definitely a disappointment in my mind. Am I mad that I bought it? Kind of. I wish I would have enjoyed it. I was actually hoping I would end up enjoying it, but that was not the case, because once upon a time I used to look forward to the annual Assassin's Creed release more so than pretty much any other game out there. So it does kind of suck, but it seems like Assassin's Creed as I know it is pretty much dead and buried at this point. But let me know what you guys think of Assassin's Creed Mirage in the comments section below. Have you played it? Have you beat it? What are you feeling on the game? Let me know if you think I'm full of shit, and you know, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you want more videos like this. I mean, I'm kind of open to doing, I guess, like pseudo game reviews or discussion videos, but the kind of important thing with that is I actually like to finish games before I talk about them, unlike certain content creators who I will not name.
What's up, gamers? Dreamcast Guy here.
But I don't know, man. Let me know what you guys are feeling. Let me know if you like this style of video, and I'll potentially do some more in the future depending on the game and depending if I actually, you know, bother to finish it. That's another pretty key aspect, because I'm not really beating or playing too many different games these days, because most games are either really disappointing or just don't interest me whatsoever. But let me know in the comment section, guys. Hit that like button if you enjoyed, and thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.